Welcome to Benzinga's first mental health podcast. I'm here with Jason Raznick. Jason, how are you?
Good. How are you? Thanks for having me on, Carly.
Good. Jason, for those who do not know you, can you give us a little intro? Who is Jason Raznick?
I am a human, I think.
Pretty sure.
Yeah. I guess one of the founders of Benzinga, current CEO, and 3 kids, family. I'm here to try to build and make this a company that solves problems for the average user. I think it's, embarrassing that the average Joe doesn't have the same tools as a sophisticated hedge fund investor. And Benzinga has just been around to, democratize access to information, be it investing, be it sports betting, etc.
Okay. So we are here in our Detroit office. Now, I know this isn't where everything began. So what was your first office? Where did Benzinga begin?
It was in a rental house that we were living in the basement of a rental house.
Really?
Oh, yeah. It was actually Fox Business came around and followed me around for a day, and the washing machine and dryer would go off and buzz, and I would have to go under pillows to the noise, from the buzz on the washer and dryer. But it was in the basement of this kind of old house in Michigan.
Okay.
And so it's inside the garage, it was the basement, but it wasn't like a finished basement. It was totally a raw basement. At one point,
it was there was and your computer.
Yeah, there was a sewage backup at one point. We had it was bad, but yes, it's me and my computer on this desk, and I'd put on the wall different papers of a goal of how many users in the first month. And if I did that, then we'd go to the next stage. If I did that, then I'd go to the next stage.
Right.
But it was, it honestly began in my head. I was in college and I loved small cap stocks, but I also had several different startups that I built and, didn't totally follow through on them. And it was one of those things that was a long time in the making. And one thing led to another. I'm like, it's time to stop talking about it and just go build it.
So did you literally have to just invest all the time you had, or were you working a side hustle to pay for it? What did that look like?
There was some side hustles for sure. I was writing articles for different places. So I would write 4 articles a day, get paid, and that was the side hustles. And yeah, it took money to start the company, and I had $3,000 in savings and a 3-month-old baby at home. So it was it was definitely anxious times because I went to undergrad B school at Michigan. I could have went into investment banking, could have been a lawyer, and my friends were doing that. And I'm late 20s, I think, or no, I was early 30s, 32, starting this from scratch. And you have no clear definition of are you going to get a paycheck?
Right.
And I left a job to go start this, and and so a lot of stress to go start one of these things.
Yeah, but it's full instinctual. So you say you had this vision. Did you have anybody in your corner telling you should do it, or were you just alone? I know I need to do this. It's something I'm passionate about. Like you said, you could have taken an easier route, but you're I need to follow my instincts.
I would say that my dad and my wife were supportive. If I was going to do something, the time was to do it then and not later when your kids are older.
Right.
The older you get, the harder it gets sometimes. And so it was definitely not stress-free because it takes money to start these kind of things. And it's not just money and cash. There's legal, there's setting up the company properly, doing everything. When people say to me at Benzinga today, these days, someone in marketing, I can't do that. I'm doing the marketing. I can't write an article. I can't reach out. It's I was business development. I was the writer. I was the MC. I was multiple people. I had to be multiple names you got to fake it till you make it.
Right.
And so it was, if I didn't do it, it didn't happen. And so I would make it happen. That's.
Yeah. And I think that's really cool. And that's kind of been your advice to me since I've gotten here. You've always just been Carly, just do it. Stop thinking about it. Just go for it. And I think that's really good advice.
Yeah. People tend to make things bigger than they are. And when I was in college, I had a textbook site. I had no money to market it. So what did I do? Before the Michigan Notre Dame game, I called 2 airplane companies that fly over stadiums back in the day. And I said, can I fly my banner over, when people are buying textbooks? They're like, it's like $3,000. I'm like, well, I have $275 or $300.
Really?
So Friday, they called me back Friday at 3 p.m. I'm like, all right, do you still have it? And then, of course, they did it. And
Really?
then not only, but I know for people to see a brand, you don't just do it once. I went to Home Depot and Kinko's that night. I was up all night and got 2x4s, went to Kinko's, printed out signs. So when you walk up to Michigan Stadium, our signs were there for the textbooks.
That's crazy.
And I probably paid $60 for that. I don't think Kinko's even charges the printouts, but the 2x4s, and there were signs everywhere. And it was just sheer hustle and, being solution oriented.
Right.
And not like, when I tease you about like you wanted to post something earlier and someone didn't get back to you. Like that's crazy to me. Like you just make it happen. If I was at 2 a.m. at Kinko's Home Depot, I think like fighting for my life in the middle of the night between people like trying to rob me and I didn't have any money to give them. It's like you make it happen. And
right.
But a thing I learned, Carly, though, in my earlier years was it doesn't matter what you start. It really matters what you follow through with.
Right.
Because my textbook site was actually decently successful, but I got bored of it.
Right.
And so I just didn't totally stay on it. And many years later, I got back to the stock market and trying to provide a solution based on like what I had a passion for.
Right. So since we're talking mental health and you discussed a little bit about the beginning stages of your career, being in a basement, having a kid and a wife to provide for, how did you deal with mental health during that time? You must have been a little bit stressed, or was it just pure focus and hustle? Like, what was your mental state when you began growing your business?
So my mental health was way better, I think, in college when it came to that stuff.
You're so excited.
I think so. What I was like, would get down on, like my friends were going out to Rick's, going out to the bar, and I'm sitting in my room working with distributors to ship textbooks,
Right.
I'm like, oh, it's going to be, and I had boarders interested in all this stuff. So I was like, probably some of the college life I missed a little bit.
Right.
Not a ton, but a little bit for sure. But then I would think, well, some people didn't even go to college. So like, no big deal. Starting Benzinga was a whole different mental health thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't just straight focus. And also it was a lot of stress.
How do you deal with stress when you feel stressed?
How do you deal with it? Well, there's two different answers. One back then, because I don't know that question. I don't know if you're going to ask me that one other question, but back then that stress or now that stress?
Let's say first back then, before you maybe really learned how to deal with stress. Do you even remember? I feel like kids maybe would go out party or drink or something.
I think so back then, I mean, I guess, do you want me to give you that, like that whole story? Or
yeah.
No? So back then I started Benzinga. I had like $3,500 in the bank when I started it. And, I had a 3-month-old at home. So there was a lot of anxiety. So I'd wake up at 3 a.m. almost every night, like 4 nights a week, with as much anxiety as you could imagine, with still being on this planet. And
was the anxiety from wanting to be successful with that company or just being like, I need to pay my bills this month? What was the anxiety?
It was both. Like my wife would say to me, Jason, like, what's the worst case scenario? If it doesn't work out, we can just go move in with her parents.
Right.
Okay. And like,
what an amazing person to have by your side, first of all.
Well, to say go move with their parents, like that's relieving, but it's also like go to move with your in-laws, and then like what am I doing for a life,
Yeah.
But yes, that is true that she would, support that because I mean that's true. Or I just like maybe thought, oh, she wants to live with her parents too, But no, but that is true. But that also kind of relaxed me a little bit. But I would wake up at 3 a.m. because how am I going to pay bills?
Right.
And build the company. I mean, Carly, the craziest thing is I remember the first time when you start a company, when you're poor, hungry, and driven, which was like a PhD is what I describe it. No one handed me like a bunch of cash right in the beginning. I remember the first time paying someone $40,000 a year. I thought it was the craziest thing ever.
Right.
So $40,000 a year, the way I equated to it, that's 1,000. That's 10 $100 bills almost a week. Okay.
Right.
Which I know that's not a ton of pay. What I'm saying to you is back then, to me, I was like, oh my, like how would I ever be able to pay that?
Right.
Yet alone pay myself that.
Right.
Okay. And I'm starting this company. So I'd wake up at 3 a.m. with as much anxiety as you can imagine.
It's crazy because you could have in that moment wanted to quit, but now you're here.
Well, if I continue on that notion, I would wake up with all that anxiety and I didn't know what to do. And so I started like thinking in my head, all these thoughts, and I would get to the thoughts of like, if I wasn't here anymore, then my family wouldn't have to deal with wouldn't have to deal with me, wouldn't have to have the stress, anxiety. So I was going to those really dark thoughts
Right.
that you hear about these days all the time. And I like would wake up and I don't know, like, I know that solution is something where everyone else who's left deals with it, but you get to a point where you have so much anxiety, your heart starts, like my heart would beat like
You'd like be having anxiety.
Yeah, it's like a double heartbeat, I feel like, almost.
I think
like
they call them panic attacks now.
Yeah, well, panic attacks, but that anxiety, and like, how does it go away,
Right.
And so I think I got help eventually at that time. I think I got help. Like, I went and talked to a therapist. And I think if it wasn't for having outlets to talk to someone, I think the outcome here would be very different, because all that anxiety builds up in my heart is, like, and we talk about these days and age, and suicide is such a prevalent thing.
Yeah.
And you're like, I can't believe this person did that. This is a great life. Like, for example, I'm thinking of the DJ for the Ellen DeGeneres show,
Right. Yeah.
We don't know if he had that feeling in his heart where it's like, you don't know how to, like, you're like, just want to end things, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, if you end, like, that pain goes away. Now, there's a lot of solutions and help out there, but I still think the solutions and help are not even close to where they need to be, because I'm sitting here at Benzinga and we have 150 people here. How many people have panic attacks or anxiety for the right reason or wrong reason?
Right.
Even me, the right reason back then. Because like your point that you just mentioned, and I skipped over it, was if I would have given up then,
right,
and didn't follow through, none of this would exist.
Right.
None of this, like, none of this.
Which is like, for people listening right now that may be in that moment that you were in, and you're saying like, I went out and I got help and now I am the way that I am. I think that's really beautiful to share with people.
Yeah.
So
and
do you have any advice for someone that maybe literally is listening? You never know. Maybe that's why we did this podcast, So get help. And what are some things maybe that you learned during that time?
So over time, and I don't have it all figured out, and
of course, we're human,
and I never will, and because we're human. But one of the lines that my brother told me is, "This too shall pass."
That's good.
So no matter what that anxiety is, this too shall pass.
Right.
So like, you may have been bothered by something today, or me teasing you that you didn't get that video uploaded. And I saw your body, your facial reaction, like almost like dejected that I said that. But the thing you should remember is, like, that conversation you're not going to remember in 2 weeks. This too shall pass.
Right.
This too shall pass. It has to do with people getting let go at companies, or I worked at a company, and it was, a bad company a long, long time ago. And like, this too shall pass, like, no matter where you're at. Now, it's much harder to say that,
right,
when you're the one facing that thing. Because like, how is this too much stress? Especially when it comes to death. Like, so someone, your family member, whatever, this too, but time does have a tendency to heal a little bit.
Okay. So I guess my question with that phrase, which I think is a great phrase, I think it's in the Bible too. This too shall pass. Do you feel, what supports that? Is it the universe takes care of things? Is it a belief in spirituality or a certain religion, or what? Just time?
I think it's just time that the next thing you'll like forget about this. Like, I remember, I don't gamble a lot, but back in the day I liked to play blackjack, and I will remember if I lost 400 versus won 2,000, I'd be way, 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 way more upset if I lost $400, and I would have like anxiousness over it. Like, I would be really upset. Okay. Yeah. And 2 days later, 3 days later, you don't think about it again.
Right.
So I think there's time with that, because there'll be solutions that come with it. Like, if you put your right foot forward and you can try to execute, you'll make, like, there'll be some good that comes out of it.
Yeah.
You don't know what it is now. It's those that sit back and just expect things to come. And it's those that, if they really want to build something great, are they spending 6 hours a day golfing? Are they watching the Kardashians on Sunday night? Or instead of Sunday night, like Jesse Itzler, he had a marquee jet. He would sit at a coffee shop and just give muffins out to give his jet card out versus watching the Kardashians.
Yeah.
My point is, like, if you go and do things, success usually will follow in some way. It doesn't always follow. Like
Right.
it doesn't, because at the end of the day, our brains mess with us a little bit.
Yeah.
Like when I was doing the textbooks business, which I should, and then the online dating in 2000, I should have stayed with. But I was like, the grass is greener over there. The grass is greener over here.
Right.
And I see a lot of young people get caught in that. And I honestly want like people to learn from my mistakes,
Right.
learn from where I was mentally. Like I have a video on my phone, and it was like one of these videos where I woke up at 3 a.m. and I'm like, building a business is tough. I don't know how I'm going to make payroll next week.
You still have that video?
I still have that video.
That's crazy, Jason.
Yeah, it's on my phone right here. I was going to do it like every night, and then I just did it one night, and I was like, as much anxiety as you could imagine. And again, I had no money. Like I didn't have, there was venture funding that came in later, but it wasn't a lot. And I didn't have, this was blood, sweat, tears, and some venture funding that came in later, but I didn't have, and so.
So I do want to talk about some of the success in a little bit, but before we move away from the straight up mental health talks, I have a question. So what advice would you give to someone who is building a business, but also experiencing maybe that moment of mental health and they're thinking they should step away? Now, I know you're going to say keep going and don't give up, but what if it comes to a point where maybe they do need space and time to take away from that business to just work on themselves? Do you feel like that's a good thing, or no matter what, you should always be pushing for your business and like growth?
So what do you mean they need space and time? Like, because if you just say, okay, I'm going to stop the business, but I need space and time. Like what I would say is it may not be the right time to build the business. So, but work wherever you're working, but when I say you work on yourself, I don't know what that means, because you have to be doing something. Okay.
Yeah.
Like the worst thing to be doing is nothing. And, so if there's a business, so say you started a business, knitting, blankets. Okay. And you weren't able to get them to sell. No one would, but you're so passionate about it. You think it solves a problem. These blankets have air conditioning in them. They have a heater in them, whatever it is. Okay. and they solve a problem, but no one is interested. Okay. So then what do? The mental health is taxing you. You say, okay, I have this idea. I'm going to keep it there. I'm going to limit myself to 2 hours a week on it. Just 2 hours a week. I'm going to go back to doing what I was doing, but 2 hours a week. So that way you're not throwing it away completely.
Yeah, that's my question. Exactly.
It's still on your radar, but it's 2 hours a week. Meaning you're not tied to the results. You're tied to the process. So if you're only spending 2 hours a week, you're not expecting huge results. But that 2 hours of undivided attention on it could be enough to move it forward, and eventually it could. You never know, it could work out. I have a friend who had a water bottle company, who was doing small sales, and one day it went viral, did 200,000 in one day. So you just never know.
Yeah.
I don't think when you say go work, I need to go work on myself, and like unless you're going to like a mental health rehabilitation place, I think you gotta be very careful to not just go home and do nothing. Let's say I left Benzinga. Like, should I just go home and do nothing? And then
keep yourself busy with
what habits do you get into? Like, if you had no responsibilities other than taking care of your kids, like I don't know. I think there's a thing to being productive and being busy.
Right. Okay. So now you walk up to the building, you see Benzinga on one of Detroit's like coolest, biggest buildings. Looking back to you, who you were in the basement, feeling that anxiety, like not everybody can say that they've experienced that. So what does that feel like? Are you proud of yourself and all your accomplishments? Or are you still in that phase of like, I need to grow? So
I do have a problem celebrating successes.
Okay.
Like I do. Maybe it's because like I don't want the attention necessarily on me, even though now I'm doing a lot more of the video stuff, which seems counterintuitive, but
Would you have a story,
Well, I'm being pressured to doing this stuff, not just by you. So
okay.
Not just by you. And so who knows? But then again, like I could say no and not do the video stuff, or I could jump into it.
Right.
I know by doing this video stuff, I'm going to get negative comments and positive comments.
Right.
I know that the more you do as a person, the more negative and more positive you're going to get. I promise you, someone will take something out of context and they'll read into it, or they'll make fun of something, or there'll be something on my cheek or your cheek. and you have to have the
I checked my cheek.
well, it's like the more people that say negative, it's like, oh, you have a passionate, loyal following. If they're willing to talk about you, well, then and when
no press is bad press.
in some respect, absolutely. And that's, many people became famous with bad stuff like that.
Right.
But walking, like the way you said it, like walking the building and seeing our digital billboard outside, it is surreal. And it's like
going to pump your gas and you see your employees, like
team members. It doesn't seem, it doesn't seem real. It doesn't seem real.
It's crazy.
It doesn't seem real. And I know there's so much more we can do. What gets me excited or gets me what gets me excited is seeing team members achieve way more than they thought they could achieve. Like when we did our transaction and people made some good money here, that was exciting for me.
Right.
You know, that's what gets me excited. It may just sound like lip service, but it's not.
No, that's
so
awesome.
Where I get frustrated and burnt out is when I see someone who has so much talent and doesn't use it to its fullest ability. I mean, there's people sitting nearby here that I think could achieve so much more. Now they may not want to achieve so much more, but like if they want to, I want to help remove barriers and say, here are the ways I did it when I was in college. Like I was using freelancers across the world when I was 18 years old. I mean, I started camppackages.com. I had the domains. Like I owned hundreds of domains. I was doing stuff like this way back when. What I was bad at, I didn't have a person right next to me that can follow through on these things.
Right.
And that is the key. You know, you have to know what you're good at and know what you're bad at. And I'm bad at a lot more than I'm probably good at. But like going back, Carly, to the mental health stuff, laying in bed at 3 a.m. with my anxiety is high. Like those are real feelings that I'm sure others have felt.
Right.
And
most people, especially now after the pandemic.
See, you say most people, and I don't know that because I feel like no one talks about this stuff.
Yeah.
Like a question that you were talking to me about before is like, what's one of the most challenging things that you had to overcome and accomplish? Well, one of the most challenging things overcoming and accomplishing was building Benzinga for sure in the beginning stages. I mean, it's challenging as ever now too, but I'm just saying back then, because the anxiety and the stress, and what I hope that happens from these shows is that we get way more stories out there of people having these significant challenges, anxiousness, mental health, and hearing how they overcame them. Because, you know, like, and I don't know if you've been touched by it, but I know 7 or 8 people over time that, you know, I'm not saying I know them all well, but who have committed suicide. And my mom would always say, that's a long-term solution to a short-term problem.
Yeah.
And that applies to this too shall pass.
Mm-hmm.
But at the time when you have all that anxiety in you, you're like,
can't see it that way.
You just want it to go away.
Right.
And so people say it's a selfish act. I think it's easy for someone to say that, but when you're in that thing and you're, you know, but again, it's a long-term solution to a short-term problem.
Right.
And so how do we at Benzinga and doing these shows make a difference to have people see that there's light at the end of the tunnel? Like that's why I wanted to share my story. I know my parents don't love me even sharing it because they're like, Jason, if you were really struggling with money this much back then, like when I know money, like they said they would have helped me out.
Right.
But I don't want to go to my parents and go get money from them and they needed it. I just felt like weird. And that's why, like, if I can help people out and if it's money or this, like, I want to. I mean, we have,
because you've been there.
I've been there and I've helped people out. I've given people money directly. I've never said it, but I have.
Right.
And it's just like, I've been there and I've been there, you know, my other startups when I was in college, like I learned the wrong ways of doing it, but it's just like, slow down. This too shall pass.
Yeah.
And if, like, your question, I think is really good. If you're in a startup and it's not working for you, it's okay to put it to the side for a little bit. I started writing a book a long time ago. I didn't finish it. I put it to the side, but I promise this year is the year I'm going to finish it.
Yeah.
And yeah.
That's awesome. Thanks, Jason. So before we wrap things up, I would just say, yes, this might be heavy topics for some people, but the overall message here is that you do get through it. If you reach out and find resources, you take care of yourself when needed, and you don't give up on yourself. And I think that's really beautiful. So thank you for sharing that.
And I think you shouldn't be afraid to talk to someone.
Yeah.
I think you're not necessarily looking for attention, but I think if I didn't go talk to someone, I don't know, like, I don't know if Benzinga would be here. I don't know. Like, I just don't know. Like when I had those moments, I don't know where I was at, but like it was really stressful. And maybe we'll show in some B-roll, the video of me. I think
that'd be cool.
I look really attractive. Okay,
I might be crying.
Well, I'll show it to Carly, and then she'll decide if it goes in the.
Well, we're all human, so I think it's great to be vulnerable.
Well, we all are human, and the other thing is we're all so similar. So like, even like I see sometimes people fighting inside Benzinga, not fighting but arguing, and I just like want to say you're a football team. You're all on the same team.
On the same team,
but
yes.
Even as humans, we're all so similar. Like we're all so similar. Like the thoughts that we have, the actions we take are all so similar. We may think we're so different, but at the end of the day, like 90% of us are like, we're just all like very similar and like
connected too.
Exactly. And so we should be there to help people out more. But like, I don't know how many people people in the past have come to me about mental health at Benzinga because I used to talk about it more.
Yeah.
But like, it'd be interesting to see because mental health is, if you don't have your mental health, forget about wealth, forget about making money. Money doesn't, forget about being famous. Like I know you have an amazing voice. Like if you don't have they say if you don't have your health, you don't have anything. If you don't have your mental health, you don't have anything either. Like and I'm not saying it's always good times. Trust me, it's not. Like, I mean, it can't but it's just like, it's
like
important.
Being on a beach when you're depressed, it doesn't really matter if you're on the beach.
Right.
Like if you want to experience things, you want to be happy and you have to find that within yourself. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges that people have in life is to be happy. And that should be the number one goal. To
be happy and don't try to find a reason to be not happy.
Yes.
Like it's really easy to wake up, Carly, in the morning and being down. The other way is, I was just watching a video, a podcast, someone else. The other way is when you wake up, just be, no matter what happened last night. Let's say you got fired from your job or whatever. It's the worst. You don't have any money. Just wake up and say, it's going to be a great day and jump out of bed.
Yes.
And what can happen out of that is strong, you just don't know. But if you don't do any of it, then it's like, if you approach it negatively.
And you feed off of it.
Yep. It's just like with your building, what you're doing here. If you think you're going to get negative results,
you'll probably manifest that.
Exactly. And if you think you're going to get positive results, if you think that you're going to get this to be 100x bigger than it is right now, you're going to manifest some magnitude of that.
Right.
And it's just a question of doing versus talking about it. Because one of the biggest takeaways I have from that mental health thing is 90% of people are starters. Like someone said, America's a place where you start ideas, but they don't run to the finish line.
Right.
So that's a story.
Thanks, Jason. Is there anything else you want to say before we wrap things up?
You can follow me, Jason Raznick, on Twitter at Jason Raznick, Raznick. I guess it's probably in spelling at the bottom of the screen. Click that. And if you have anything on the mental health side you want to just talk about, feel free to reach out there and check out benzinga.com when you get a chance.
Thanks, everyone. Tune in next week where we will interview someone else as well. If you have any ideas or you would like to interview, feel free to reach out as well. So thank you. Stay happy, stay healthy. Thank you so much for joining our first podcast of Benzinga's Breakdown. I hope you guys enjoyed all the segments, you enjoyed yourselves, and we can't wait to see you next week. Bye, y'all.
Bye, guys.